Morning all. My name's Jeff Houston. I pretend to work for APNIC sometimes. Sometimes they pretend to employ me, so you know, we have a good time. I used to think routing was really fascinating, and for a long time spent a lot of time and effort looking through the innards of BGP and trying to sort of figure out how the network was working by looking at the entrails of BGP dumps, until I discovered the DNS. The DNS is amazing. I'm like, there's a blossoming of physics in the 20th century. And in the early 20th century, we had people like Einstein, Pauli, and the rest of them who discovered amazing things about our physical world. And one of them was Werner Heisenberg, who in 1927, in looking at this duality of physics between particles and waves, and whoever thought I'd be discussing this at NANOG, you know, God knows why, but nevertheless came up with a really amazing principle, which said when you try and determine a particle's position, you lose the ability to accurately determine its momentum, and vice versa. And indeed, the uncertainty in that measurement is actually limited by, of all things, Planck's constant. Who would have thought that there's a fundamental limit to how accurate you can be in measuring the physical world? Fine. Does the DNS obey Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? By God, it does. There are acute limits as to how accurately we can measure the DNS. It is just this opaque mush of machines. The fact that it works is a miracle. The fact that it gets answers inside of a few milliseconds, if you heard the talk yesterday, is not just a mere miracle. This is indeed the pinnacle of civilization of the 21st century. It should never have done this. You know, it is just so cool. But as I said, there are some questions that defy us, because when you look at the DNS, you think, God, this is just so simple. I ask a machine a question, it sends me back an answer inside of a few milliseconds. But you know, when you look at it, inside is this astonishing set of cogs, wheels, rotations, recursive resolvers, forwarders, server farms, all kinds of muck happens inside there. And to try and understand how that works is truly difficult. So this was originally a lightning talk, and I was going to whiz through this stuff in 10 minutes flat. I see they've given me 45 minutes, so I'll take a little bit more time. But I'm going to look hard at security in the DNS. Why is it your bank? When you go online and you go to somewhere, what tells you that you're not being deceived? Well, you know, the thing goes green. And if the thing didn't go green, you're being deceived, right? So obviously, if I can paint the thing green, we're okay, aren't we? Yeah, right. So underneath this is the rather disappointing problem that your browser trusts 1,600 certificate authority entities. One of them might be in this room, maybe two, but you have no idea of the other 1,598 of them. And some of them do things for money and only money, and some of them do it really badly. And the problem is that your browser trusts all of them. So if I wanted to be your bank this morning, I have to find one of those 15 or 1,600 that'll either do anything for money, there are a few, or I can push over in an attack, mint a fake certificate, and sit really close to you and say, hi, this is the key for your bank. This is the TLS session. I'm your bank. Your browser will go green. You'll tell me your credentials. We're all happy. Well, you're not, because I've got all your money. What's going wrong is the pinning problem in security. that having a bunch of certificate authorities looking at a transaction, oh, you delegated that name to over there, oh, I think that's cool. That kind of third-party journalism is the underpinnings of our security system, and quite frankly, it stinks. It's really insecure. Wouldn't it be good, said the dreamers, if the DNS was reliable? That would be good. Wouldn't it be good if when you got an answer, it was digitally signed by the party who owned that domain zone? And then they could say, quite neatly, look, I gave my credentials to Symantec, you poor fool. Symantec have issued this certificate, and in the DNS I say, only trust a presented certificate if the issuer was Symantec, or Let's Encrypt, or anyone else. It pins down any possible attack, because now you can't attack any one of those 1,600 certificate authorities, you have to attack that one. And sometimes the job of security is not to make things perfect. It's to make the attacker's life so hard in attacking me and my bank, they go and attack you and your bank instead. That's all I want out of this, and that's one way of doing it. But to make that work, to actually let the DNS give you clues, you've got to trust the DNS. That's a really big step, because if you go to many places in this world, many places in this world, and ask for an innocent sounding domain name to be resolved, like, I don't know, thepiratebay.org, you will find in many countries that will not resolve, that someone is lying and giving you the wrong answer when there really is an answer. If you put security in the DNS, if you armed the DNS with digital signatures, you may not get the right answer, but you know you're being misled when it's the wrong answer. You know that something's going on because the security credentials aren't working. And so while we don't have smooth integration of the DNSSEC into our security world, it seems pretty clear that trusting 1,600 people whom you barely know is a really, really bad idea. And if you have to trust them, at least having another point of trust, belts and suspenders, inside the DNS is actually a good idea. Because at that point, the attacker's life gets a lot harder. So that's DNSSEC. It took us about, 20 years to get there. It was a long and tortuous path, and I'm sure there are bodies buried all the way through the IETF to get here. But, you know, the outcome is really cool. You only need one key, that key signing key. And when I send you an answer with its digital signature, you know two things about this, and they're two really, really good things. It's valid. If it's my zone, I said it, and I cannot deny that I said it, because I've signed it. It was me. I said it. I can't unsay it. And secondly, it has a date, a use-by date. If the date has moved on, don't believe it. You're having a replay attack. So you know the information is up to date and valid if the signature works. So not only does it allow attacks in the DNS, you know, to be a lot harder. It's hard to inject fake information when things are signed. But quite frankly, the Kaminsky attack requires an advanced graduate degree to actually deploy. And the one thing about folk who do bad things on the internet, simple really works. So in some ways, subverting the DNS is not really what's going on. But what is going on is that our underlying security models in the internet, and in particular, in that piece of rubbish we call the web PKI, if we can't get something else to prop it up, then we're going to continue to suffer things like Route 53 attacks, because now we've got certificates available in seconds for free. They're worth what most things that are free are worth. I'll leave it at there, go figure. So DNSSEC is important. So it improves the robustness of the DNS, it helps us with pinning in the web, And it actually gets us a little bit more towards an environment where security is robust, security is accessible, and you don't have to pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to some third party to go and say, oh yeah, because quite frankly, they're not doing a great job for the money. That's why. Now, I've heard a lot of folks say, oh, DNSSEC, no one uses it. It is weird, but in Turkmenistan, which only has one ISP, that ISP deploys DNSSEC. So that little green blob on this map, just there, is Turkmenistan, where 90% of the folk in Turkmenistan, bless them, will only go to a domain name if it's signed, if the signature is valid. So if you're going to launch your dastardly DNS attack somewhere on this planet, it won't work there. It won't work in Mongolia. Interestingly, in large amounts of Africa, it won't work. Why that? Why are the Africans so far ahead? Google's public DNS, honest DNS, has actually been most successful around the world in places where you aren't. There is an extraordinary amount of use of all-8s in Africa. There was an extraordinary amount of use of all-8s actually in Southeast Asia and in Turkmenistan and Mongolia, and not forgetting Greenland. Over in Norway and Sweden, they do it for themselves. They don't rely on Google. But the fact that Google does do validation and all ones and Quad 9 and so on has actually done an amazing change to this world. 1 in 7 folk will not go to a domain name if it's not signed validly. If the signature has been corrupted, not going there, which is actually really good news. It's tracking about the same rate as V6 deployment. So if you're really feeling optimistic about V6, you might as well feel really optimistic about DNSSEC. You know, it's around the same kind of levels. Here's the curve over the last couple of years. We rose to about 14%, and then the Indians decided, oh, it's all too complicated, and one of the large providers turned it off. Sad face. And the last few months they've gone, oh, sorry, oops, we'll turn it back on again. And so we're back up towards 16% of the world is now doing DNSSEC. Great achievement. But all of this hinges on that single point of trust at the top. Unlike the web PKI with 1600, there is only one. Now, the way this works is really simple. It's all on this slide. The root is signed. What the root signs is a special piece of DNS called the DNS key. And inside that DNS key is a working key called the zone signing key. That second key signs all the entries in the root zone. But it also signs the zone keys for the next zone down. They're called DS records. And so if I look for my domain, www.potteroo.net, what you actually find in the root is the zone entry, DS for .net, is sitting in the root, signed by the root. One level down in the .net zone, there is a DNS key entry that defines the zone key, and you'll see a delegation entry for potteroo.net. That's not signed, but what is signed is the key, the DS record. And if you then go down to the name servers and look at my zone, you'll find my DNS key entry signed by the same key that net has signed, because it's my key, and then you'll find my entry signed by me. Must be me. It's me because you trust the root key. No other reason. It's me because all the keys interlock, and if someone's trying to be me, they need my key. There's no other way around it. So this is pretty cool. And what if I want to roll the key? I'm feeling bored today. Oh, hell, what the hell? Just roll the key. Well, it's really easy. I tell the net folk the key for potteroo.net has changed. Here's the new key. It'll then publish 2 DS records, old key, new key. I wait for a while for all your caches to blow up, explode, renew, so that you're now seeing both records. And after that wait, I then use the new key and just stop using the old one, and then tell my parent, .NET, pull out the old key, no one's using it, or if they are, they've got a problem, or I've got a problem, but let's just move on. It doesn't happen in a second, but it happens within a few days. It's all about cache lifetimes in the DNS. But it's simple. You can roll keys anywhere you like except the root zone, because you know it has no parent. So at some point, we need to roll the root zone key, because in cryptography, there is no such thing as a key that lasts forever. The heat death of the universe predicts that. You know, at some point, we're all going to be dead. In the end, we all go. But even before that, it's still not very good. Cryptography relies on difficult problems, not impossible problems. The current cryptography for the root key is based on prime number factorization of very large composite numbers. Euclid's, no, the Siva Eratosthenes, God knows when he lived, it was a few thousand years ago, figured out the only way you can work out the prime number factors of a really large number is by counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if the number's big enough, you and I will be dead before we get there. But our computers are getting smarter and smarter and faster and faster. So what was difficult 10 years ago is, my phone could do it today, what's the problem? And what's difficult today, your phone will do it in 5 years' time, and so will mine. So in some ways, what looks good today might not look good tomorrow. Keys need to change. So the next thing is, the key might get compromised. Somehow or other, someone might look over my shoulder and go, that's the key. And if someone else can be the root of the DNS, where all this trust resides, it's kind of an oops moment that shatters the DNS. Oops, didn't mean to do that. The best crafted plans do fail, unfortunately. But it needn't necessarily be compromised. If you can't get to the key, it's useless. So these keys are held in 2 storage facilities, but you know, geology, tsunamis, fires, who knows? Just all the normal snafus. There is a minute possibility you just can't get at the key. If you can't get at the key, you need to have a new key. So no key is eternal. A number of you folk don't write perfect software. I know it's a surprise. I know you think you're really good at this, but sometimes you don't. And one of the classic mistakes that folk have made is that they took the old KSK value, the one we're using today, and put it into code and cemented it in. Bad move. Because when the key rolls, there's no more old key, you're stranded. So we need to institute a discipline of changing keys, and we need to change the keys regularly. Why regularly? Because of these things, we might have to change it in a hurry some point. And if we need to change it in a hurry, it'd be good to know how we change it regularly. And if the bad people give us 30 days notice, we'll be right there with them. 30 days from now, an attack. Okay, good, let's roll the plan into action. We're cool. If it's less than 30 days, okay, we can all panic. But it's better to gain experience in doing this normally, so that when we understand how it works, we should be able to do it when we really need to in a hurry. Take note, RPKI people, same issues, same operational considerations. This is not just the DNS. So the mechanics of doing this is that I can't just get my parent to sign me. There is no way of known of doing that. What I do is use time. And this is this whole idea that old signs new. Now, if I got hold of that old key and I'm a bad person, I can start forking you off down a track. So there is a particular piece of hold down that says, this attack better be really good, because the old signs the new for a minimum of 30 days. A minimum of 30 days. So we introduce the key and go, don't use it. For Christ's sake, don't trust it. When you see it, keep on watching. And you need to see it there for a continuous period of at least 30 days. If you see that, pull it into your local trust set. It's the real deal. So that's step 2. Just wait. Introduce it and wait. After at least 30 days, or in our case, 395 days and counting, it's a conservative thing. We backed it off by a year. After that period, use the new key straight away. Sign the root zone DNSK with the new key. The old one won't help anymore. It's no good. Wait just in case. Remove it, but don't revoke it. Just in case hell has frozen over, some strange thing has happened, you need to back out. But in about 3 months' time, let's make this irrevocable. Let's publish the old key back in the root zone with the revoke bit set. Forget you ever trusted this key, because you don't want trust in old stuff. Your old house keys are no good to anyone. You don't know who's picked them up. Same with these keys as well. So that's the mechanics of doing this. And we are here, right in the middle of this wait period. And we're going to do a roll on October 11. Now, like I said, Heisenberg. Like I said, the DNS is really weird, because everyone has built DNS. There's DNS resolver code everywhere, and it isn't all the same, and it doesn't work to the same spec. Some of it doesn't even work to any spec at all. It's just, I was feeling creative. It was Friday. What the hell? So we don't know if you've all built the same stuff. We certainly don't even know the quality of our specs. The IETF says rough consensus and running code. What it doesn't say is really, really good specifications that guide you all the way down, because it doesn't. I don't know if someone's counted the number of DNS RFCs, but it's more than the fingers and toes that I have, so obviously it's too complicated. It would help if we could code. We can't. It would help if the internet worked, but you know. And it would also help if the stars were aligned in our favour, because we need all the divine help we're going to get. And if we get all that, we'll be fine. But we're not going to get all that, are we? We really don't know how brave we're being. So we need to measure. We need to peek deep inside this mess called the DNS and see how ready we are. So when we thought about this problem a little over a year ago, we thought, well, wouldn't it be good if resolvers said, I trust this key? Now, it'd be nice, but how do you get a resolver to say anything? Resolvers answer queries. They don't report. And that resolver sitting in your CPE, that resolver sitting in your closet, that resolver buried deep down in your phone, what does it report to? So the trick was that what they would do is get that resolver from time to time to issue a query. Not backwards to you, but forwards to the root zone. And so this mechanism, defined in 8145, started sending signals to the root zone, towards the root zone, about the keys they trusted. Seems like a great idea, doesn't it? It's really, really bad. Why? This is what we saw this time, slightly earlier, late September last year. So what had happened was, we introduced the new key and no one believed it. Until this point here, when we introduced it, some folk immediately said, I trust it. You credulous fools. Wait for 30 days. You could have been hoodwinked. Bad idea. What did I say about bad code? Bad code. Once 30 days goes through, you're meant to have gone, that's a good key, I'll trust it. And almost everyone did, except those who didn't. That's kind of anti-gravity. Why are around 5 to 10% of resolvers going, no? Now, there are a few things about sending things to the root zone. I don't know about you, but my attempts to get root zone traffic data have been frustrated every step of the way because it's not public data. Because this other thing, DNS privacy, actually says that you folk and I send all our secrets towards the root zone. Good idea. But what that also means is that none of us get to see root zone data apart from the root zone operators. So digging into this data has been difficult for all of us. Finding the true extent of this has been hard. So we had a problem, we didn't know how to quantify it. It seemed really serious. Let's just defer the role of the root and figure out what's going on. And that's what happened. Because it was certainly clear there was some kind of problem, but it was not clear if the signal was bad or there was a problem. You know, is this a bad test or you guys can't code? So those were the questions. Is this signal accurate? How many users use that resolver? What's the damage? I'm like, if those few thousand resolvers were each a one-user resolver, out of the, I don't know, 3.8 billion internet users, man, who cares? But if one of those resolvers was used by a few 100 million people, you care a lot. So it's not just you need to know the resolver, you need to know the users behind it. And indeed, you really need to answer a very big question: what proportion of all users are going to get drawn into this mess? RFC 8145 can't answer that. Because, like it or not, we designed the DNS to meet entirely different requirements. There is no DNS trace route. There is no trace query. When a query hits a resolver, meh, I don't know why. When you look at the DNS, what you see is a bunch of queries and no reasons. No users, no nothing. The DNS doesn't tell you why it does things. And of course, to make the DNS frighteningly fast, most of the time you store the answer and use it again and again and again and again, because you know, that's what makes things fast. So there's a huge amount of caching. Sometimes queries never make it. And quite frankly, measuring resolvers' uptake of a new key is not really the issue. The issue is how many folk, when the key rolls, are not going to have an internet at all? How many folk are going to go black? Because the DNS is key to everything. If the DNS goes black, you're black. And that's the real question. So measuring resolvers is really measuring the cause, not the outcome. So we need a different measurement. And this is one of these things about measurement. You can measure the infrastructure until you're blue in the face. What users do is why they pay you money. What users do is actually why they use the internet and why they use your internet and not someone else's. So if we did a user-side measurement, could we do this? And the answer is, in the DNS, no. The DNS will not let us test for new keys. Big sigh, beat head against wall, you know, moan. So, okay, I can either change the semantics of the DNS, yeah, right. Move the elephant 1 foot to the left, yeah, good luck. Or I can maybe bribe some DNS software vendors, because the ecosystem is pretty small. Around 3 vendors do most of the resolution in their code. If we could get them to change their behavior ever so slightly, we might be able to get a peek from the user side. So what if the leftmost label had a magic string? And if that magic string caused you to return serve fail, even if the answer was good, maybe we could get an insight. So if I ask you, is this key a trusted key? If it's not, return serve fail no matter what. It's as if that's invalidly signed. It's an innocuous change in many ways. It simply substitutes failure for an answer, and does so not because of the signature, but because of the label. And similarly, there's the inverse, because you need the inverse in this kind of test, which says, report to me a failure if you trust this key. Same semantics. But interestingly then, I only need 3 queries, and I know what your resolvers do. And not just one resolver, your set of resolvers that your ISP gave you. So I can test them all at once and say whether you're okay or not. 3 queries, laser pointer, 3 queries, and then 4 questions. Did you load it? Well, that query will give you an A record, that'll give you a serve fail, and of course an invalidly signed thing will always return back serve fail. So if you're not validating, that query 3, badly signed, will give you an answer. No, you're fine. No matter what happens with the key, you're just fine. So these two then tell you whether you're okay, or whether you're in deep doo-doo, or whether your resolver hasn't loaded up this functionality. I don't know what's going on. It's a mystery to all of us. So that's where we start from. Google's wonderful. Google is brilliant. And it's not because of their silly search engine. It's because of ads. Because Google bomb the world with ads. Now, the thing about ads and online advertisers is that mere pictures and words are nowhere near enough. Ads have to sing and dance. And the only way you can make an ad sing, dance, change shape, follow your mouse, and annoy you like crazy, the only way is to embed code. This is so cool, because I can use this. Because I can put in code that says, oh, backwards, sorry. I can put in code that says, go fetch that URL. Go fetch number 2 URL. Go fetch number 3 URL. Tell me the answer. Whoa! Now, the other thing about Google Ads is that the way it works is if you click, I really pay. If you don't click, I pay a really small amount. Don't click on my ad. It's got APNIC in really big letters. Just leave it alone, okay? Because the less you click, the more ads get presented because Google's trying to take my money. And so this really works, up to 7 to 10 million ads a day. And what I really want to do before October the 11th is to test this not across a few thousand, that's nothing, but to test this on at least 100 million people before October 11th. And if I can, 500 million, to get such a massive cross-section that we understand what this user impact might be. So, it's going to roll on October 11, and I was waiting to get resolvers that supported the trick, so I've been measuring for the past week, since the 19th of September. This is the first set of numbers, and it's kind of as we expected. So, like I said, 1 in 7, around 16% of users will not go to something if it's invalidly signed. But what that also means is that if they're not tracking the KSK roll, 16% of the internet, in the worst possible case, will die. And that includes Comcast users. Sorry, folk, your resolver does do validation. It includes me and a whole bunch of others all over the world that do validation. It's not going to be that bad. We know this. We know this. So 0.5% of users report that they've loaded the new KSK. 0.005%, which is way down in the noise, report they haven't loaded it. I think that's noise. The problem is that this is a new mechanism that hasn't even got to being an RFC yet. And some of you ISPs don't keep up to date with patches and new versions of resolvers. You really should. The old ones are shit. You really should keep them up to date. I think we know who you are. Anyway, I'm not going to say that today, but yes, 15% of users are running old resolver code that doesn't support this for one way and another. So the uncertainty level is really high. But the results actually look pretty good, because if I say, well, of the ones we don't know, the ratio of is okay to not okay is the same, I get to an end state where around 1 in 1,000 to 2 in 1,000 users may be in trouble. Around 0.1 to 0.2% of the user population may be in trouble with the key roll. I don't think it's anywhere near that. I don't think it's anywhere that high. The noise in this is really difficult. How do I know that you have or have not resolved the DNS name? I'm not you. The ad doesn't tell. All the ad can do is load a web object. And so the web itself is its own piece of uncertainty, as you well know. The web is not very reliable, folk, you know, big clue. So there is a huge noise level in this. The uncertainties are high, but that is a nicely low number. It's not 5%, it's not 10%, it's not the numbers we were getting out of RFC 8145. Quite frankly, I think we can be relatively confident that this will go smoothly for most people, not for all. Some of you really are sitting behind resolvers that validate and have the old key hardwired in. You have a problem, because not everyone is doing this pre-provisioning. Equally, there are folk like Google's resolver that aren't giving me signals, but they assure me, and I have no reason to doubt them, they're ready. They're ready and trust will happen. Cloudflare are ready. The big resolvers are ready. We can't measure all of those with this mechanism, but quite frankly, the big ones aren't the problem. It's the little ones, and it's the little ones we have trouble with. So there's a message here, and this is where I'll end and see if we've got any questions. It's going to happen on October 11, but you run caches. Things will go dim as your caches expire. Things will go dark when your cache expires. Across the next 48 hours, you may get folk ringing up your help desk going, if they can, God knows if they're using VoIP or not, but getting in touch with you by semaphore or somehow saying, my internet is now completely dead, nothing works. Just be aware that in that period, if that's the date, one of the first questions to try and establish is, what's your resolver config? And maybe you should be using ours for the moment, assuming that yours works. So test your resolver, make sure that you're doing the right thing, and tell your help desk that around that period, add something to the script when the user says, it's black. And the answer may well be, that piece of crud you just bought, that is your CPE with some kind of wacko new DNS resolver, turn it off. Just don't use it at the moment. Wait and load a new key or get a new box. Do anything, your DNS is busted. And I think that's it. Any questions? The angst we've gone through to get here, I would have thought there'd been some. But you know, I'm cool with this. I'm glad you're all well prepared. I'm just there too. It'll be easy and no drama.
Hi, Jacques Lato with Syrah. Is there a website people in this room can go to check to see if their recursive they're using is valid or not?
What a brilliant question. I do it in the ad, but I haven't set it up. Warren Kamari, if you're listening, set it up and post it to Nanog. And if you don't do it by the end of today, I'll set it up and do one and post it to Nanog. Good suggestion. I think there is, but I need to look it up.
All right. I look, I couldn't find it, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We should have one.
Great suggestion.
Steve Michaelostic, Civio. In one of your earlier slides, you have the green and red of resolvers that have updated. At the end, it starts to reverse where more resolvers become not updated. Why would they? Is it somebody forgetting to write the config and rebooting the box, or what's going on with those?
Wes Hardiker did a whole bunch of work on this at the start of this year and actually found a mobile application for VPNs where you set your VPN and tunnel through, where the DNS resolver associated with that wasn't validating, but it was reporting a key state. So there's all these sort of strange artifacts out there that when you start reporting one-off use resolvers, those one-off uses flood everything else. Okay. So yes, to the limited amount of work we've done, it looks like a lot of that signal was kind of false. And the work we've done from user land certainly says, I can't see a problem. There's lots of uncertainty and lots of mist, but I can't see the problem to the same extent. So yes, those folk who write VPN software for mobile phones and so on, there are specs in the IETF. Read them. Thanks.
Tim April, Akamai. Warren actually predicted that earlier. If you go to ksk-test.net, you can test with the KSK Sentinel draft. But
ksk-test.net. Warren, I love you. No other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.